Hey everybody, JJ here, back talking today about another one of my favorite albums. An album that when I first heard it, I took great influence from it, and I've come back to this album a handful of times over the years. Rediscovered it, become enamored with it again, like all these things, and the project that I've been working on. It was all based around concepts and albums and artwork and all these kinds of things, and just creating this kind of a bigger picture than just a few songs or a handful of releases. I feel today we're really kind of back into this era of the singles and the songs, and those are all important. But for me, in music, I gained a much bigger appreciation through albums and art concepts and these packages. Music can be enjoyed in this broader experience than just listening. And movies. You can say the same thing about movies. It's like what are movies? Movies are moving pictures with sounds, and more focus on the moving picture, perhaps less on the sound. And I tend to think about albums as where it's a flip. The focus is on the sound, is on this thing, but that doesn't mean that you can't take a lot from the videos that accompany the songs, or the packaging that's on the artwork, or the presentation of the band and their live show, things like that. I feel there's a lot of interconnection between movies and music that way. It might be an old kind of thought process or something like that. Maybe a lot of people don't share, but that's how I tend to think of it. And music is my primary entertainment source as well. It's not really something I kind of do just as a background, activity. I do have music normally on in the background, but there are times where I sit and, just invest myself into listening. And this album is, a very high watermark in that idea, where this should be an album that you do invest these kinds of things into, because there is a much bigger picture at play here than just the songs. The closest thing you might be able to make a comparison to, or what this is akin to, would be perhaps a movie, or even a play or a stage performance, which, interestingly enough, is I think a stage performance is kind of what ended up happening with this album at one point with the singer. Anyways, the band is Queensryche. The album is Operation Mindcrime, and this is a concept record. And concept records, sometimes it's like it just goes whew, There's a handful of those that have happened for me over the years, and whatever, it's like maybe the concept's not that interesting, or you only heard one song and you didn't get the whole picture, whatever it is. Now, exposure to Queensryche early on would have been through just music videos. Believe it or not, it wasn't even this album that I heard first from Queensryche. The first things I heard were actually from one of my other favorite albums, which is the follow-up to this, which is called Empire. A song like Jet City Woman was the single that was off the Empire album. And so that's a very catchy song. The other one is, Another Rainy Night Without You, I think is the title. I'm so bad with song titles, but Another Rainy Night. There was two kind of hits off that. And then the single came off of that, which was Silent Lucidity. So that was where, I heard of the band for the first time. And then I had, at that time, maybe a little bit while after that, I had seen something regarding Metallica, who was my favorite band. And they had talked about, Queensryche and Metallica shared management, and I think Queensryche had opened up for Metallica on the Injustice for All tour for certain dates. So that really piqued my interest in learning more about Queensryche and investigating further into their catalog. so not this particular the vinyl copy, but I ended up getting the CD for Operation Mindcrime, and not really even realizing it was a concept album or any of the themes that like went along with it at all. I was literally just kind of listening to it and picking out a song. One of my brothers was more familiar with the band than me, and he had a couple songs that I think he had listened to or had a tape of. One of the singles off this one was "I Don't Believe in Love." That's kind of the most accessible song that's on this, and so there's a few songs that were kind of already perhaps a little bit on my radar, but getting into the idea that this was meant to be taken in as a whole and not just song by song was still kind of like a bit of a foreign concept to me. It wasn't until I picked up an album from a band called Fear Factory, and the album was called Obsolete. And that album, I didn't really know it at the time, but it was a concept album as well. And it tied into all these science fiction themes, the movie The Terminator, just these things I was really, really into at the time. And so that album was like a concept album, and I started revisiting a lot more albums that were concept albums that I kind of, turned my nose up at a little bit as being a little bit too artistic, and taking them for what they are. And when I did that, this album became like a whole new experience for me. And, as far as the songs go, like there's so many amazing songs on here. The Mission being a particular standout for me. Eyes of a Stranger is an incredible song. I did a cover of that song early on in my my YouTube, and I would love to come back and cover that one again. I haven't played it for quite a long time, but I'm lucky in a way where once I've learned a song, it's always kind of in the old memory bank. So someday I'm going to come back to that, and at some point possibly even cover most of the material on this. That's what my hope is, to get through it, as I know most of it. So but yeah, getting back to like just about the songs, all the songs are great lyrically. Honestly, I never looked too deeply into lyrics ever. The music side is much more important to me. Obviously, the melodies, harmonies that are going on with the singing are very ear-catching, but I was never particularly focused on lyrics. And sometimes I would pull out the liner notes and read, and things would capture my interest. And when I found out that this was kind of a bigger concept than just a few songs, I really kind of tied into the whole thing and the story that's behind it, with like a secret agent essentially. It's like, you can read about it. It's clearly compelling. Instead of reading about it, listen to the album in its full and read the liner notes, and you'll get kind of a bigger picture of the story. Operation Mindcrime was clearly one of the singles on there. It's the namesake for the album. Really, really amazing. Getting to the drumming related to this, Scott Rockenfield. I'd seen the music videos for some of the singles from Empire, and his big white drum set with the chains. And if you're unfamiliar, if you look up a picture, I'm kind of hearkening back to this. There's a lot of drummers from that era. Not that I have chains on my drum set, but the large drum set, the white drums, these things. I took all of those as influences and visually things to kind of put into place. And Scott Rockenfield's, not only his visual aspect and his playing, but his progressive kind of nature with the drum parts. The drum parts are deceptively difficult for some of these songs. He has a very kind of like unique, almost there's a lot of musicality in his playing. And what I mean by that is just like he's like able to like put these parts together that just have this kind of like a symphonic, like a multi timbre, like kind of arrangement to them. I think they're very meticulously arranged drum parts. I don't think anything happens on accident. I think, and he's composing things that are going along with certain a bass part here, a guitar part here, a vocal melody here. It's very powerful. The drum sound on this album in particular, and Empire as well, it's very similar drum sound, but it's very, at the time where you have big production and over-the-top embellishment when it comes to drum sounds, it's kind of like a dialing back on the silliness of it, but the power of the performance is amped up. And hearing his cymbals was when I would hear the drum sounds and I would hear certain cymbal sounds, the reason Scott Rockenfield is one of the big reasons I ended up moving over to Paiste as well. I was always enamored with the sound of his cymbals. I thought they were just so like beautifully orchestrated in the music, and they added so much. And they not to go on about Paiste too much, but the album itself, it's just like, it's a amazing music, just a journey. The story is super compelling, but the songs can stand on their own. I've already mentioned my two favorites, but I look at the album listing here, and there is so many good songs on here. Speak is an excellent song as well, really up-tempo. They cover a lot of genres. And, it's interesting that I wouldn't even almost touch upon it, but the vocals, like Chris DeGarmo, the players in the band, Chris DeGarmo, Eddie Jackson, I can never remember the other guitar player's name, but top-notch musicians. Chris DeGarmo, the band was never the same after Chris DeGarmo left. So clearly his influence on the band was massive as well. But Jeff Tate is one of the greatest vocalists that we've had, like in our, the last 40 or 50 years. Clearly a standout for the band. A lot of people may not like him for his overly kind of operatic approach, but I get it. And his voice is a bit... nasally is not the right word, but he has quite a high timbre to his voice. So some people just don't, like high voices. Some people don't like low voices. Leonard Cohen, has a very low singing voice, and some people find that annoying. Or, Tom Waits, something like that. Different strokes for different folks. But, as far as ability goes, it's insane. Yeah, it's unheralded for, outside of... There's a handful of singers from the 80s and 90s. That is the era of the rock band with the great singer. And out of all those bands, if you can be the guy that's the best, it's like, or one of the best, that really says something. And, Queensryche has split off into two camps. And, forever I thought, I'm kind of split myself with it, because Jeff Tate is clearly an incredible vocalist and a great performer as well. He added this very theatrical element to the band that's very captivating. His hands and like just his gesturing and stuff. It's very akin to like a theater production. And he's something to watch. But then he had the backing of this amazing band. And so for me, it's no slight against any of the musicians that have ever played with him, but it's the knockoff version. Both bands have become kind of the knockoff of the other in a way. And I did recently see the non-Jeff Tate side of Queensryche. And, the band sounds great. And I couldn't even tell you who's left from the band originally. It might only be one guy at this point. So calling it Queensryche is kind of a stretch to me anyways. I get why they use the name, but it's just not what it was. And the magic is in those five guys together. And Scott Rockenfield was very heavily involved in the production. He was heavily involved in sequencing, coming up with like segues between songs and keyboard parts and all of these things. And it's like when you lose these elements of how all the band members work together, there's a little bit of magic taken away, until eventually it's just stripped down to some kind of a jukebox, like a Muzak version of what the original idea was. And that's just me being a selfish music fan. There's plenty of people that are okay with both iterations of Queensryche, but to get the, you know, the real power and the experience, it's like this and some of the early concert videos are really, really where it's at. You know, I'm like that with a lot of my favorite bands. If it's the not original lineups anymore, I would almost just kind of rather keep the originals in my little back pocket and you know, and revisit where my interest was first developed rather than what it's become, or, you know, the shell of the entity as it's become. So, but yeah, as far as concept goes, this album was definitely on my mind regarding a project I have upcoming where we talked about, you know, big picture, artwork tying in, songs, taking in the whole thing as an album versus song by song, or being singles based or something like that. Myself personally, it's just my own personal opinion, but it's just like I'm longing for a time where, you know, the album is given the same weight and you know, importance that it used to be. We've just gotten into a time that I'm just not a fan of, where it's just, you know, I don't know, it's not that the albums aren't being put out. I'm just not into them. I'm not discovering them. Even in some of the platforms I'm using for streaming, I'm just not being exposed. Word of mouth from people I know is still the way that I really tend to find any new music or things like that. But yeah, it's as far as the selfish endeavor of art itself, you know, we're not behest to anything in my upcoming project, and it's our thing. You know, we can do as we wish with it, and the people involved in the project are all big fans of these kinds of concepts and having physical media and stuff like that, and that's definitely where we've tried to go. Not so much like you know, sticking our middle finger up at the modern ways of consuming music, but we want to give precedence to the way that, you know, things were as well, and honor the past and stuff. But this is a great album for guiding us and you know, using those kinds of things to our advantage, and yeah, inspiration as well. So amazing album from an amazing band. If you haven't checked it out, Queensryche, Operation Mindcrime, give it a listen. And yeah, it's a lot to take in. It's not an easy digest by any means. Meaning, you know, it's not your simple 2-minute, 3-minute songs. This is something that requires your attention. And if you give it your attention, you'll be greatly rewarded. So check it out. Cheers.